Good evening from the State of Kuwait. Welcome to the 7 o'clock news for Saturday, the 17th of May, 2014. I am Dalia Badran with the headlines for tonight. United Nations warns of water shortages and food supplies in the besieged Syrian city of Aleppo. Efforts to solve Iranian nuclear issue vain after talks between 6 world powers and Iran failed. Thousands join Prime Minister-elect in New Delhi after his opposition party swept to victory in election. African leaders attend the summit in Paris on Nigeria's Boko Haram militants who seized about 220 school girls. Hello and welcome. His Highness the Emir Sheikh Sabah Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Majesty King Harald V of Norway on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah sent a cable of congratulations to His Majesty King Harald V of Norway on the occasion of his country's National Day. His Highness Sheikh Jaber Al-Mubarak Al-Hamad Al-Sabah, the Prime Minister, also sent a similar cable. His Highness the Crown Prince Sheikh Nawaf Al-Ahmad Al-Jaber Al-Sabah will patronize and honor the ceremony for the most outstanding employees at Kuwait Institute for Scientific Research, KISR, for 2013 and 2014. His Highness the Crown Prince has deputized the Minister of Education, Minister of Higher Education, Ahmad Abdul Muhsin Al-Mleifi, to attend the ceremony, which will be held at 10 a.m. tomorrow Sunday at the KISR headquarters. Syrian government forces continue to pound the opposition areas around Damascus, including the town of Daraa, southwest of the capital. Meanwhile, the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights also reported the bloodshed in Aleppo and said a large-scale army operations was underway in Daraa, southern Syria. In another development, United Nations Secretary General Ban Ki-moon warned of water shortages to at least 2.5 million people in the besieged northern Syrian city of Aleppo, blaming rebels for the disruption of the service. The head of the United Nations agency said that progress has been made in providing food to some 18,000 civilians trapped in the Yarmouk refugee camp in the Syrian capital, but an agreement must be struck to also allow in desperately needed medical aid.
25% is our estimate of the level of need in food requirements that we had been able to cover since the beginning of the year. So clearly much more has to be done. I insisted in my meetings with the authorities that there should be ways to find possibilities to bring medical supplies in without there being a concern that this be misused in any way by anyone, but just simply focus on the needs of the population, which are extreme need.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas met again with the U.S. State Secretary John Kerry, this time in London. The meeting was focused on the peace talks, which fell apart last month after Israel re-engaged on a prisoners' release deal and Israel angered at the Palestinian unity deal. Sources reported from the meeting the commitment of Abbas and the U.S. to the peace process. The U.S. State Department's comment after the meeting said the door remains open. More in the following report by Fatma Abdel Karim from Ramallah.
Mahmoud Abbas met again with the U.S. State Secretary John Kerry, this time in London. The meeting was focused on the peace talks which fell apart last month after Israel reneged on a prisoners' release deal and Israel angered at the unity deal by Palestinians. Sources reported from the meeting the commitment of both Abbas and the U.S. to the peace process. As the U.S. State Department comment after the meeting said, the door remains open.
Palestinian side insists that in order to take this move, there are certain commitments that have to be met by the Israelis. First of them, to release the 30 prisoners that were part of the previous agreement.
But the Abbas-Kari meeting is not the entire story. In a surprise step, Levni held talks with both the U.S. State Secretary and with President Mahmoud Abbas. Levni, the chief Israeli negotiator, said the goal of the meeting was to understand Abbas's intentions following the breakdown of the talks. She told Abbas that the unity government of Palestinians makes it difficult for Israel to renew the talks.
The Palestinians, they have no problem in meeting with the Israelis. The problem is in the negotiation while the settlement continue building. Therefore, the Palestinians want peace talks with horizon, with the substantial process, not just talking for talking. Therefore, the Palestinians want to immediately talk about the borders, and during the time of talks, they need a kind of settlement freeze.
Palestinian officials said the U.S. and Palestine are now in a point of re-evaluation of the outcomes of the 9 months of the peace process and are both seeking scenarios that could be put back in play. The secretive meeting is no longer a secret, and it doesn't seem like it's going to be the last one joining Palestinians, Israelis and Americans, despite the fact that no progress was cited in the past 10 months since last July. Fatma Abdelkarim, Kuwait TV, Ramallah, Palestine.
Thank you, Fatma. Talks between Iran and 6 world powers hit a major snag over the future size of a nuclear program that Tehran says it needs to expand to fuel atomic reactors, but which the U.S. fears could be used to make nuclear weapons. Both sides reported difficulties as the talks went into their 3rd day, with Iran affirming that the negotiations were moving slowly and with no progress. Here is more on this report by Salim Al-Kandari.
The efforts to resolve the Iranian nuclear issue were in vain as the latest round of nuclear talks between Iran and the 6 world powers failed. The disagreement had been looming in the background since talks began February 18 on a comprehensive deal meant to constrain Iranian nuclear work that can make arms in exchange for full sanctions relief on Tehran's economy. The 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council plus Germany want a deal that would ensure that Iran's enrichment capability was so constrained that it couldn't break out quickly to produce enough fissile material for a bomb. For its part, Iran, which has been regularly denying that it desires a nuclear weapon, wants economic sanctions against it lifted and recognition that it can continue to enrich uranium for what it asserts are peaceful uses. During Vienna talks, Iranian and American officials said that progress was slow and difficult, with serious gaps between the two sides on basic issues like the size of any nuclear enrichment capability Tehran would be permitted to retain. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi affirmed that there was not tangible progress in the round of the talks and that differences were too large to begin drafting an accord, adding that the talks would continue next month.
We didn't make any progress, but negotiations would continue.
Disappointed?
It doesn't mean that we are disappointed. It doesn't mean that we have failed. No, we will continue our negotiations. This was the first round of real negotiations. In previous rounds of negotiations, we had only brainstorming sessions. Now we try to. The goal of this round was to draft an agreement. We feel that differences are still there, and we should wait for the time that we can start drafting when the positions are closer to each other.
The dispute over enrichment surfaced less than 2 months before the July 20 target date for a deal and follows encouraging signs of progress on less contentious issues in earlier rounds that had raised hopes that a pact could be sealed by then. Until then, diplomats say that there is a tentative agreement to re-engineer a partially pilled reactor so that it would produce less waste plutonium, material that also can be used for the core of a nuclear weapon. They also say Iran is ready in principle to sign an agreement with the UN Atomic Agency that would allow its experts to visit any declared nuclear site at very short notice, investigate suspicions of undeclared nuclear activity, and push for a deeper insight into all atomic work.
As the Ukrainian government and pro-Russian separatists prepare to hold multi-party talks today, sporadic fighting took place overnight near the eastern Ukrainian city of Sloviansk. The Russian Foreign Ministry issued a statement condemning what it described as a sharp escalation in the violence in eastern Ukraine, accusing the Ukrainian government of using the talks as cover for military operations against its citizens. Sloviansk and the surrounding area has seen some of the worst fighting in recent months as pro-Russian militia continued their call for full independence from Kyiv for the Donetsk region. The United States and the European Union have already imposed several rounds of sanctions on Russian individuals and some companies, accusing Russian President Vladimir Putin of stoking the eastern rebellions, a charge Putin has denied. Earlier, Russia has warned that it will not supply Ukraine with gas in June unless Kyiv pays in advance by June 2nd, raising fears that deliveries to Europe could be affected. India's Prime Minister-elect Narendra Modi received a hero's welcome at his BJP party's headquarters in Delhi after securing the most decisive election victory in 3 decades. Manmohan Singh, whose Congress party was crushed in the poll, has tendered his resignation as Prime Minister to make way for Modi, who campaigned on promises to revive the economy. More on this story by Badriya Al-Saleh.
India's newly elected Prime Minister Narendra Modi has floated the idea of building 100 new cities, extending a high-speed rail network across the subcontinent, and undertaking the colossal task of cleaning the Ganges River, inspired by China's model of high-growth, top-down development. Modi's BJP party won a historic mandate in the country's general election yesterday, emerging with 282 of 543 parliamentary seats, more than enough to form a government without having to broker a post-election coalition. The reasons Modi's party succeeded in defeating the Indian National Congress, which has controlled India's government for nearly all of its post-colonial history, will be studied for years. For decades, the Congress Party's trademark initiatives have been redistributive, and the party introduced a package of major subsidies for the poor just before the election. However, voters proved to be more captivated by Modi's promise to create manufacturing jobs, which he has done quite successfully in Gujarat, the state he has governed since 2001. Modi is drawn to large-scale building and infrastructure projects. His party has proposed pro-business legislation, like the easing of labor and land acquisition laws. However, his planned economic reforms are certain to encounter obstacles once he takes power, among them a federal system that puts essential functions like land acquisition in the hands of state leaders. And changing tax policy or labor and land laws would require the support of the upper house of parliament, which the BJP does not control. Voters' expectations of immediate economic improvement are extremely high, setting the stage for rapid disappointment if Modi is seen as not delivering.
France is to host a security summit on the threat from Boko Haram after they abducted more than 200 schoolgirls in Nigeria in April. Nigerian President Goodluck Jonathan and other West African leaders will attend the talks in Paris. Nigerian president has ruled out negotiations over their possible release. On Friday, Jonathan was due to visit the northeastern town of Chibok, where the girls were seized but called it off for security reasons. Turkey's energy minister said today that the body of one more miner was retrieved overnight, bringing the death toll in Turkey's worst mining disaster to 299. Officials said a new fire and increased gas levels inside the coal mine in Soma, western Turkey, were hampering search efforts for an estimated 3 miners still believed to be trapped underground. Government and company officials have denied that negligence caused the disaster as opposition lawmakers raised questions about oversight, and a survivor said safety inspectors never visited the lower reaches of the mine. On Friday, police used tear gas and water cannon to disperse rock-throwing protesters in Soma, who were demanding that Prime Minister Recep Tayyip Erdogan's government resign. At least 20 people are feared dead in Bosnia-Herzegovina and Serbia after the worst floods in more than a century. Tens of thousands of people have fled their homes as several months of rain fell in a few days and rivers burst their banks. Serbian Prime Minister said the number of deaths would not be made public until the waters had receded. A new flood surge is expected on the Sava River on Sunday. A Laotian Air Force plane carrying senior government officials crashed today, killing at least 5 people on board, including the country's defense minister and his spouse. Laos National Assembly President was also on board the plane. The plane crashed in a forested area of the province near one of Laos' major archaeological sites, the Plain of Jars. The cause of the crash was not immediately known. The crash was the second in Laos in the last year. Last October, 49 people were killed when a Laos Airlines flight crashed in the south of the country. And finally tonight, in the state of Kuwait, under the sponsorship of Assistant Undersecretary for Quran and Islamic Studies of the Ministry of Awqaf and Islamic Affairs, Mr. Abdullah Barak of the Saraj Al Munir Management organized its annual educational aids exhibition at the Grand Mosque. The 8th edition received large numbers of participating teachers who competed for the best educational techniques and tools that are used for students. Here's more on the event in this report by Salim Al-Kandari.
Head of Saraj Al Munir Management, Mr. Abdullah Al-Kandari, opened the 8th edition of the annual educational support exhibition with large participation from teachers and spectators.
We have today events for educational tools, techniques. These techniques we are using, or teachers use them in the class to reach the information to the students. Today we have like a contest between our centers. We have 11 centers for people and 13 centers for girls.
The event about annual exhibit for the Siraj Al Munir, to show what they can do it for improve the education in the best way. And I'm really happy to show what they do here. It's like it's really very nice to see what they do inside, and I'm excited to see what they can do what can they do to improve himself and the Siraj and all the Siraj centers in Kuwait.
I am quite excited actually. I was very, very surprised to see such an exciting educational exhibition. This is something that is quite important for us, especially for minorities that come from different countries across the globe. An event like that, I think, brings with it incredible amount of resources and education that is very useful for people who don't have the kind of access that countries such as Kuwait has. So it's incredibly useful and very exciting to be able to take back some of those resources for people to use back home in Australia, where they are teaching Muslim children within Islamic schools and general educational context. So it's very exciting.
The exhibition included educational methods and innovations that support delivering the information to learners and make the curriculum more interesting.
The Ministry of Awqaf and Islamic Affairs has organized this exhibition to showcase the competition and the contest between the teachers into the use of educational techniques and tools to deliver information the best way for students. From Grand Mosque, this is Salim Kandiri reporting for the English News.
Thank you, Salim. This is the end of tonight's news. A reminder of the headlines. United Nations warns of water shortages and food supplies in the besieged Syrian city of Aleppo. Efforts to solve Iranian nuclear issue vain after talks between 6 world powers and Iran fails. Thousands join Prime Minister-elect in New Delhi after his opposition party swept to victory in elections. African leaders attend the summit in Paris on Nigeria's Boko Haram militants who seized about 220 schoolgirls.